Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly suggested. The following is for educational and amusement reasons only, and is the verbatim federal, according to Inner City Press. Millions of people have seen Ashton Kutcher play the charming prankster on a steamy April morning in a Manhattan courtroom. That same man stood up not as a celebrity but as a witness in one of the most horrific celebrity cases in recent history. Sean Diddy Combs faces a sweeping list of charges ranging from sex trafficking to organized abuse. Kutcher, formerly a member of Diddy's infamous Hollywood rap gang, had no choice but to stand silent, filled the room, and when Ashton spoke, what followed left the court startled. Kutcher wasn't only there to disassociate himself from Diddy, he was there to reveal something anyone expected, a bombshell revelation, a betrayal, and a secret that might change everything. This is the moment Ashton Kutcher witnessed. This is the narrative of the day he broke his silence. The atmosphere in the courtroom was exceptionally tense, even for a case already drenched with. But when Ashton Kutcher was called to the stand on day 9 of the trial against Sean Diddy Combs, the room transformed. Kutcher didn't approach like a Hollywood celebrity, used to red carpets and pomp. Instead, he went in like a man cornered, his tie tight, his brow dampened, his eyes scouring for an exit that didn't exist, since for the first time he wasn't on a soundstage. He was under oath, as the media had suspected. Years of picture investments and partying with Combs have resurfaced in the aftermath of Diddy's incarceration and Ashton's. The staff had been working hard to tidy up the timetable, but no amount of spin could change what the prosecution had dug up. Kutcher's name appeared in letters, security logs, financial information, and most incriminating of all, in a handful of movies confiscated from Diddy's property. Ashton Kutcher, the prosecutor, began. Do you know this image? Kutcher took one glimpse. At the screen it was blurry, but it was him. Shirt slightly undone, drink in hand, smiling in a dimly lit room. Around him were faces blurred for privacy. I do, he said, swallowing. That was in 2009, Diddy's white party. That was the first of many confirmations. And as his evidence evolved, a carefully manicured public persona began to collapse. Kutcher testified quietly at first, but with a quiver in his tone. I was friends with him, he said of Combs. I looked up to him, but there were things I saw that I ignored. He explained how the so-called the Hollywood Rat Pack had formed Diddy himself, Danny Masterson, and Wilmer Valderrama. At first it was partying, then it was business, then it was anything. Another turning point, according to Kutcher, was when it went from private gatherings to what I'd call curated experiences, and I didn't ask enough questions. When the prosecution questioned if he had ever witnessed criminal behavior, Kutcher paused and said, I didn't know what I was seeing at the time, which is what I keep saying myself, but I know better now. He revealed that Combs frequently had a separate staff working the back rooms, personnel who stole phones and directed guests to certain locations and collected NDAs on site. Ashton confessed that even he had signed several NDAs over the years, saying, I just thought that was standard. Everyone did it. But then came the recordings. The court listened to audio collected during a party in 2013 at 1. You could hear music and laughter coming from Diddy's residences, followed by Ashton's voice saying, I don't think we should be filming this. Someone else said, relax, it's all taken care of, they already signed. The prosecution turned to Ashton and asked, who were you referring to? His eyes darted to Diddy, who was sitting stone-faced. The defensive table guests. Ashton finally added, some were models and some weren't, but they weren't told what was going to happen. Not really. By the end of part 1, Ashton's testimony wasn't just about Diddy, but about complicity in a culture of silence that rewarded those who played along, punished those who asked questions. And it was clear Kutcher had once been one of the former. But now in front of a judge, and Ashton resumed his testimony into the afternoon, recounting the infamous years of the new Hollywood rat pack. It was me, Diddy, Danny Masterson, and Wilmer Valderrama, he said. He related things that at the time sounded fantastic. Private flights to secret locales all night, benders in mansions, with no clocks or windows. But these tales now took on a terrible tone. There were entire rooms during those events where only specific people were permitted in. Ashton said, You had to be approved. I didn't ask who was doing the approving, but the prosecutor pressed him. Did he ever? Ashton inhaled sharply. Not with my own eyes, he continued. But I heard things and I ignored what I heard. I blew things off and convinced myself they were just stories. He described one instance in particular, a private yacht party. In 2012, Diddy brought out a group of young women, the majority of whom were models or influencers. He said, "They've all signed. You're safe." And I remember giggling. Shouldn't he have talked exactly how the Rat Pack dynamics shifted? Danny was darker, he added, alluding Mastersonson. More paranoid and domineering, Diddy and Danny were really close during that period. The court presented film from Diddy's 2009 White Party co-hosted by Kutcher, which was my idea, and he admitted we were advocating charity on the outside, but behind the scenes, I believe we were promoting something altogether different. He told the court that as time passed, he started hiding secrets. You don't succeed in Hollywood without learning when to shut up. I was making millions of dollars and had a brand that I didn't want to harm. Also told how those who asked too many questions weren't invited back. There was a guest list and a blacklist you don't cross, Chacomez. Everyone knew that he even mentioned a disturbing meeting between a female guest and another celebrity, whose identity was removed during court testimony. When asked if she was okay, she replied, "They told me not to talk." This remained with me, and Ashton began to cry somewhat. Here because I was part of the circle, and I saw enough to know something was wrong, and I didn't do enough to stop it. The gallery sat startled silence. Ashton Kutcher, long regarded as the lovable, goofy, tech-savvy investor and doting spouse, was now peeling back layers of a Hollywood secret few dared to confront. And it was just getting darker. Kutcher's testimony went from Hollywood gossip to direct exposure. The word freak-off, long rumored in industry blogs and anonymous posts, become part of the courtroom vernacular. What's a freak-off? The prosecutor questioned Ashton, hesitated. It's an event Diddy would organize, he added. Private, exclusive phones taken, visitors blindfolded. Sometimes it was presented like performance art, but it wasn't. Not really. He described how he was invited to his first one in 2005. I assumed it was a theme party, he said. I brought a date, and within 30 minutes I regretted coming. He wouldn't describe everything he saw, but he did say this. There were hidden cameras. There were people who seemed afraid. The prosecutor mentioned a specific information from a seized laptop. Ashton's name was on a digital visitor list tagged green light. It meant I was trusted, he added. I don't know what I did to get that, but I knew what it meant. I could travel wherever. He also described being given documents to sign, NDAs created not just for guests, but for high-profile entertainers, security teams, caterers. The NDA I signed in 2010 was 28 pages lengthy. He insisted I signed it anyhow, and the courtroom listened. As Ashton outlined how tough it was to step away, he added, "You're not simply backing out of a party, but of a network, a power structure, and a system." Remembered one occasion in 2014 when he tried to stop going. I told Diddy I was done, that it wasn't for me anymore, and he said, "You don't quit, you're in." That same week, Ashton claimed 3 investment prospects inexplicably fell through. I received a call from a mutual friend who said, "You made someone nervous." Ashton closed with a terrifying admission. I was worried not only for my job, but for my family. He had reach, and people don't understand. He didn't need to raise his voice. All he had to do was stop returning your calls. That was enough to ruin someone. And the courtroom broke for recess, but nobody moved because Ashton Kutcher, for the first time in decades, finally admitting the truth. When the court resumed, the attention shifted away from parties and onto something far more calculated. The financial and business ties that had silently supported the lifestyle Ashton Kutcher and Sean Diddy Combs had built. This wasn't just about what transpired behind velvet ropes. It was about what funded it. Kutcher had long been regarded a skilled investor. From early internet businesses he stated how Diddy introduced him into a group of multinational financiers, brand marketers, and nightlife moguls. Did not only host parties, they developed enterprises out of them. There were branding agencies masquerading as clubs, investment groups disguised as lifestyle blogs, It was marketing, surveillance, and recruitment all rolled into one. One name came up repeatedly: an unknown investor linked to numerous of Kutcher's companies. Later found to have direct ties to Combs' offshore business branches, financial documents revealed huge transactions classified just as consulting or event services. Yet the destinations of those monies frequently corresponded with dates of renowned private parties, as Ashton also confessed, were shell firms, which he never quite understood. They told him it was to safeguard intellectual property, but looking back, it was definitely to hide. When questioned why he didn't dig deeper, Ashton looked down since the money was nice. I didn't want to be the guy who inquired. Too many questions. The prosecution put out a history of investments from Kutcher's involvement in an elite tech enclave in downtown Los Angeles to partnership in a nightlife-focused app that folded shortly after collecting millions in financial funds that tracked back to accounts now frozen under federal suspicion. Kutcher admitted he had received updates from the app's leadership, but the user data they collected, names, locations, and biometric information, had quietly been sold off. I didn't know, Ashton recalled, but maybe I should have. He also detailed one eerie in 2016. He was offered a presentation deck for a new app built by one of Diddy's collaborators. The program was designed to allow performers communicate directly with producers. Then there was a page about distinct background checks and personality profiling that made me uncomfortable, so I passed on that one. Exposed wasn't simply a narrative of lousy parties, but a full-fledged infrastructure that blurred the lines between Hollywood and darker interests. And in the among it all were celebrities you'd see on magazine covers hoisting trophies on stage, while behind the scenes they were accepting checks signed in silence. As the years passed, Ashton Kutcher's circle dwindled, and the link that had previously bound the so-called new Rat Pack began to fray. Not because of scandal, but because of control. It became evident that within this Hollywood fraternity, devotion had a price, and treachery came with penalties. Things altered after 2014. He stated that as Danny Mastersonson became more paranoid, Wilmer Valderrama began to distance himself, and I began to hear whispers he wasn't simply referring to. According to Kutcher, people close to the group were discreetly drifting away, not out of disagreement, but because of fear. One acquaintance stopped turning up till we believed he was just burned out. But then he contacted me and said, "You know too much, get out." Kutcher alleged that, after he started declining specific invitations, events, investments, and dinners, things around him shifted. Projects that were greenlit suddenly went black. Deals went through, and some executives stopped returning his calls. It felt like I was being discreetly locked out. He described a disturbing meeting in early 2017 when he ran into Diddy at a charity gala. He hugged me, told me I'd been missing out, and then warned, "You should be careful about what you don't remember." That line resonated with me immediately after Ashton said he received a USB stick in a blank envelope at his office. It was film from a party in 2012, nothing illegal, just embarrassing. I got the message he admitted that fear started influencing his decisions. He didn't say anything, he didn't confront anyone, he just tried to back away slowly, thinking no one would notice. But every time I backed away, someone did. Something would come up, he warned. A tabloid leak, a hacked email, a threatening lawsuit, and I'd scrambled to protect my name and my family. But the bigger concern was what he couldn't safeguard: his conscience. Ashton recounted a night in 2018 when he received a call from a buddy telling him that a civil suit was approaching. Against one of the Rat Pack members, they stated, "Don't let this get to you. We'll handle it." That's when I recognized this. It wasn't just friendship anymore. This was damage control. He began surreptitiously transferring funds, dissolving ties, rewriting contracts. But even then, the ghosts lingered. Business associates would still bring up Diddy's name with veneration, and tech pioneers would drop hints. Ashton could only smile and nod as private funding rounds took place. "I felt like I was being followed by a shadow I couldn't shake," he said. By 2020, Ashton Kutcher had done everything he could to clean up his image, and investments were portrayed as benevolent, his media appearances leaned innocent, and his family. Life was posed like a postcard. But below he was operating was not alone. The entire entertainment industry was altering as the pandemic caused stars to flee. Scandals began to surface, and finally, Diddy's name. When I heard about the first raid, Ashton said I wasn't surprised. I was relieved, but the relief didn't last. And shortly after came the subpoenas, the headlines, the social media accounts publishing photographs long since forgotten, and Kutcher's name was back in the mix. This time, no public relations team could control the damage he described when federal authorities came on the door of one of his commercial properties. They had a warrant. They requested access to historical film, communications, and travel logs, which I provided. He also explained why he did not speak publicly during the initial firestorm. I was terrified not only of the legal repercussions, but of how far it would reach and who it would damage. The worst blow came in 2023 when footage surfaced of Kutcher and Combs staged a party in the Hamptons that was not graphic, but it showed influencers being escorted by handlers into off-limits places. On camera, Ashton stated only one thing: keep them quiet till we start. However, when that clip leaked, everything changed. In court, we were doing a branding shot, or so I believed, based on what I was taught, but public perception didn't care, and for a man had established his reputation on charm and trust, the impact was catastrophic. He lost sponsorships, tech partners began distancing themselves, and investment firms quietly. He was removed from board postings, and Mila, his wife, was allegedly furious. She begged him to leave years ago, but he replied, "I didn't listen." Ashton told how his children began wondering why strangers yelled outside their home, why news vehicles camped outside, and I had to explain things. Couldn't even express to myself, concluded not with a bang, but with a disintegrating Hollywood A-lister, long viewed as untouchable, now witnessing his empire disintegrate. Brick by block. Not because of what he did, but because of what he refused to see, and worse, what he refused to stop. Ashton's voice lowered, a stalk shifted to someone he once called a brother, Danny Mastersonson. The courtroom sensed the shift immediately. No one in the room needed to be reminded of Masterson was caught and punished, but no one knew how deeply rooted he was in this circle or how far his power extended. Protect him, and how Ashton Kutcher was significantly more involved than he'd previously admitted. We came up together, and Ashton began sharing everything: work parties. Even investors, he recounted how the years they spent on that 70s program weren't just about filming offshore, but networking, which Danny was linked into. Scientology. Kutcher turned to technology and venture capital, as well as fashion and music, and at its center they merged it all into one web of power aimed to. What people don't know, according to Ashton, is how that power shifted behind the scenes when Danny was first charged. It wasn't simply lawyers who got. Basically, it was favors being called in from people across every industry, and I watched it happen. He remembered a particularly frightening evening in 2017. Just before Netflix dropped Mastersonson from the ranch, Kutcher stated that a private dinner took place in the Hollywood Hills with execs, producers, and a few musicians and one of Diddy's lawyers. The debate was not about whether Danny was innocent, but about how to keep everything quiet. Records disclosed, displaying a sequence of communications between Kutcher and his staff in which he volunteered to manage optics on Mastersonson's behalf. "I believed I was helping a friend," he claimed. "But I didn't realize I was helping bury the truth." The court was shown a memo from a public relations. Kutcher hired a business in 2018 to flood search engines with favorable news items mentioning himself. Diddy and Masterson in the campaign included celebrity endorsements, red carpet appearances, and even secret gifts to women's charities, all timed with certain legal milestones. "I was afraid of what would happen if the public turned against us," Ashton said. "So I became part of the diversion machine." He stopped before delivering one of most terrifying disclosures yet. There was a call in 2019. Danny was terrified. He stated if things went south, he'd take people with him. And when I asked who. Just said you know who signs the checks. I knew what he meant. Everyone in that circle did by now. It was evident to everyone listening that this wasn't Ashton Kutcher was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. This was about a man who had been near enough to the center to observe the gears spinning, finally pulling back the curtain on how silence was bought and how it nearly bought his soul. Ashton revealed something called the cleanup crew. He stated that there were fixers, drivers, private medics, publicists, and legal shields. You would walk into a disaster and by the morning, everything would be reset. People's stories would be deleted, and sometimes even memories. He related an occasion in 2015 at an event overseas, where a visitor had a medical, then a security team swept in and removed her. And by daylight, the room she'd been found in had been rebuilt. I saw the blueprint, Ashton said they covered, the entire wall in mirrored glass as if it never happened. He said that there were 3 levels of silence: the hush cash, the job offer, and the threat. Some customers received a new car, while others were scheduled in a new series, and some simply disappeared from the invite list. Financial documents were provided, demonstrating Ashton allowed payments through one of his LLCs to a media consultant who had coincidentally worked on damage control for a diddled fashion. Around the same time, when asked why he did it, Ashton's answer was simple: I didn't know how to escape. He claimed that by 2021 he began quietly, withdrew from certain enterprises, he terminated relations with Diddy's acquaintances, liquidated dormant firms, and erased a decade's worth of images from the cloud archives. Yet the more he tried to escape, the more others questioned his silence. Have you ever tried to delete a portion of your life? He inquired. The problem is, someone else always has a copy. He spoke about a disturbing message delivered to his wife Monis in early 2022. A photo of her with their children captioned with sentence from a contract she'd never seen. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder that even if you quit the party never leaves you. He ended with Kutcher, explain why he was finally speaking. I got tired of erasing me, he responded, because the longer remained quiet as I became one of them. Ashton Kutcher sat still. It was a lengthy moment before speaking again, as if he understood what Part 9 genuinely meant. Not just for the courtroom, but for legacy of everyone still watching this. This is not about saving face, he stated. About preserving. Whatever aspect of Mestel no, he was asked one final. If given the chance, would he go? Return and alter whatever I would have walked away, he responded back in 2005. The first time I noticed the door shutting behind, I should have attended one of those gatherings. Departed, but I didn't. I stayed and played. I smiled on rugs and pitched apps. While people were injured behind the scenes, he admitted to sending letters. Recently, several victims were advised not to. He asked for forgiveness and stated it was simply to tell. I see it all now, Ashton. Turned to the judge before stepping down. Your Honor said, if there's anything this court requires my email records, names, I won't resist it. I've done enough, fighting for the wrong people. A quiet swept across the room. Diddy didn't flinch because at that moment, the courtroom was not crowded with celebrities or moguls. It was full of echoes of what they had all attempted to bury outdoors. The world was watching, and whether you believed Ashton was a hero attempting to tone or simply another wicked man with a polished smile, one thing was evident. The curtain was finally drawn on the myths of fame and what was behind. It was far uglier than anyone wanted. Admit it.